Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures, and guess what just showed up? So if you can't tell, that is the logo for the Black Knight expansion from Kingdom Death. And this is a really special expansion for me because I don't have a Black Knight anymore. In fact, one of you out there just might actually have my Black Knight. I painted one years ago when the resin one first came out, and I will admit I may not have done the best job, and there's probably pictures out there somewhere of it, and I forget if I traded it. I probably didn't just sell it, because that isn't usually like me. I probably swapped it for something, and I have regretted it ever since, but I didn't feel that bad because I did it right around the time that the Black Knight expansion was actually announced. And I was talking with my wife, and I think that was the last time we were in Japan around Black Friday, which, good God, I don't even remember when the Kickstarter first funded. It's been a while, so it's kind of cool to see him return many years later. But I'll leave all the unboxing stuff to somebody else. I want to focus on this. The actual miniatures. We'll let the game players do their thing, because they probably have a lot better explanation than I do. And you'll notice already that parts are falling off the sprue. Be aware that, and I'd read on somewhere, either on Discord or Facebook or somewhere, that some of the pieces managed to dislodge themselves into the bag. So be quite careful. In fact, I can see it right here. That is part of the head crest for the helmet of the lion. So don't lose that. Be very careful with the bag. There are those little holes in the bag as well, so you might want to double check in the box before you move anything out of there. Quite a few bases in there. I know we have a few squires. I wanted to say 4. Maybe there's more. I don't even know. Let's take a look. I'm kind of curious myself. Now, thankfully, you can see here that everybody is numbered off. Marchinus. Is that the name of one of them? Black Knight Armor's Count. I don't even remember anymore. Black Knight Armor's Earl. Okay. Okay. Maybe these are the actual... Okay, these are the actual squires and stuff. Because it says Black Knight somewhere. Expansion. So that's Eola. Are there other ones? L or Ellie. I don't know how they're going to go with the pronunciation. Kane. And I would assume we have a 4th one. Owen. So we're looking at about, on average, 10 to 12 pieces, it looks like, per squire. That's not the worst. There are a few little parts, but I'm not seeing anything else falling off the sprue. So far, the only thing I've heard about is the parts of the lion, and I'll tell you right now, if that's the entirety of the lion, not lion, what am I talking about? It's a dog, first of all. The Black Knight, I mean, honestly, that's really not that bad. You've got the main piece here, and I want to say it was kind of similar with the original resin, and I wish I had it just to see the size difference, because I've heard that this is absolutely massive in comparison. Maybe I'm thinking Lion Knight, and I don't know why. But it is kind of nice to finally have this guy, and I mean, I've really been looking forward to having a painted version of him again. So, not too many parts, but I can say for the most part, get it? Most of the expansion monsters really haven't had that many pieces, so that's not too bad. Anyway, give me a sec, we'll put them together, we'll see how he turns out. I'll see if I can grab a few other Kingdom Death models, at least just to give you guys an idea of how big it is, because I'm really kind of curious myself, and I can't wait to see the results. If you want to see them too, sit tight. And it is time for the Black Knight. You know, every time I think of the Black Knight, I think of the old Black Knight 2000 pinball game. And that thing had seriously awesome music. I strongly suggest you either go search it yourself, or maybe just maybe, I'm going to put a link to that music, because it was a defining piece of video game musicianship that like had a strong effect on my childhood. But here he is in all his splendor, the Black Knight, and I gotta say there's a nice strong heft to the finished piece. Now, you may have heard issues about gaps online. They are absolutely a real thing. However, you'll notice that they're not super obvious at first glance. Now, let me also say that I have not gone and filled in any of the gaps. I have taken your advice, folks. I will be putting some sprue goo in there and filling the more obvious ones, which I haven't shown you yet. The biggest thing was I almost forgot about the ears. You can see here the ears are separate pieces from the shoulder pads. Do not forget those. Having actually built and painted the original resin one, I do appreciate the fact that there's a little plug on the inside of his cloak there for the sword to attach to, as well as a nice contact point for the arm. It's kind of interesting the way everything fits together. It's not super prevalent, or I should not prevalent, obvious. You can see the gaps really when you take a look at the bottom. And that's a kind of an interesting thing, is they're not super noticeable looking head on. There is a little bit right here you can see running down the edges of his padding and the chain mail, but I wouldn't say it's super noticeable. And I don't think there's anything really obvious on the cloak until you start looking at the bottom. And again, I think with a little bit of filler, that should not be an issue. And no, I will not put any glue smeared all over. So don't worry, folks. I haven't done the proper cleanup, but then again, I have not been to the actual hobby shop in I don't know how many weeks / months. So give me a second. I'll take care of it. But overall, I'm really pleased with it. Having, like I said, owned the original. And like I said, one of you out there has it. I don't know who has it, but somebody out there does, which is really kind of weird and interesting when you see your own work kind of come full circle. A couple times I've stumbled upon my own painted models on eBay and stuff, and it kind of made me feel quite humble when I saw people who were asking for a hell of a lot more money than I ever did. I'm not one to usually sell my stuff. I'd much prefer trading it. But that was quite long ago. I haven't really looked in ages. If you're curious how tall he is, well, he is certainly bulkier and almost as big as the Dung Beetle Knight, if that's a good reference point for anybody. Probably using some of the starting survivors would give you a better clue, but then again, the problem with the starting survivors is these days, well, they're kind of tiny in comparison to everybody else. Now, the Lucy models are some of my favorites. You can see here the original that I don't even want to know how long ago I painted this. Years. I don't know if we're closing in on decades yet, are we? I don't think so. But then, like, when you compare that to, like, the 10th anniversary Lucy, which is, like, almost night and day. Not that I did the best job on her, I'll admit, but I have really tried to go in and put some serious effort into the majority of my Kingdom Death models, of which I have a substantial amount. But again, you can see there is a good presence to be had there. Not that the original one is really standing all that erect either. But there is definitely a bit of scale creep, and especially when you start looking at some of the more modern sets, it becomes even more apparent. Grabbing another model, maybe some people are familiar with. I believe he was a knight. The Cyclops. Another of the older resins. I don't even remember anymore. Sadly, that's one of the things is I had most of the 50mm based monstrous Kingdom Death models, but most have found new homes over the years. I figure with the bigger stuff, I just could not find a use for it, whereas at least with the survivors, you know, you can always use them for something. Speaking of survivors, why don't we take a look at the ones that were included? We'll look at the squires first. Now, what's really interesting about the squires is, at least at the time that I received this box, there were no instructions anywhere, and the photos online were completely outdated, which made trying to put them together a very, very interesting chore. But then again, having built so many Kingdom Death models, well, it was one I was up to the task for. Let's take this guy, for instance. The actual model that is on the Kingdom Death website, and I know that there are some spots that need cleanup. Obviously, you can see there's a bit of a mold line there, and some stuff going on with his cloak. His sword is actually supposed to be standing up straight, but it didn't look right, and it felt more flush this way, so I went ahead with it. I do like the armor. It doesn't really match any of the current sets, and at that 4x zoom, I can definitely see spots that I need to clean up. There are a little bit of gap issues there with the cloak. Let me say ahead of time, you want to attach the body to this cloak because of how it all fits in the front piece of his armor. It's going to prevent the rest of it getting put together, so do take care of that. Otherwise, he's pretty straightforward, and yeah, I'm going to go back over it. I try not to put too much, but yeah, with that super zoom, you can see all the little issues there. Our friend with all the weapons was probably the hardest, and I don't know what I did to her face there. Definitely need to clean that up a bit. Make her presentable for the camera. The reason I say I'm not 100% sure where everything goes, so they all have these little grappling ropes. Usually you want to have the carabiner aiming down. There wasn't a... Well, this one at least had a little notch. It's keyed for it right here. She's got this pouch right here that's going to attach on her hip. The left arm didn't seem to really want to fit flush with the body. I got it as best as I could. And then this quiver seems to block everything. I'm not 100% sure where this short sword's supposed to go. It felt right going right there. And I mean, it looks okay. I'm just happy that the hands connect nicely with the arms. So we just ended it with that. Our blacksmith one here is probably my favorite. She's got those interesting shoes that the squires wear. Some cleanup I need to do right there. You want to make sure this leg, the way the legs work on this model, there's little plugs that fit in right behind the knees. They're different, so do keep an eye on that. And for the right leg, it's actually supposed to connect with this little pouch right here. And you can see the straps on her foot. That's where those are supposed to go. There is no matching one on the left. Now, I wanted to make sure that I had her hammer nice and smoothly flush with the base, because you can see the contact points on those crazy shoes that they wear are not very large, but at least with the hammer resting straight on the base, things work out pretty well. That shield is going to get in the way, but it isn't necessary to actually have it glued on prior to painting. It doesn't really hold anything in place, so it could hypothetically remain off while you're getting things ready. I wanted to just go ahead and get everything done. Otherwise, she was pretty straightforward. I do believe that you want to get the upper legs glued together and then attach the apron, and then you can build from there. The top part of her wasn't too much of a challenge. Here's another model that I had a bit of a hard time with, but everything seemed to work out in the end because he doesn't actually match any of his previous art. He's got this extra pouch as well as these extra blades on his back, which did not exist on the resin version. I can tell you that because I did own it at one point, and I don't remember the climbing ropes as well. Again, with the carabiner, there is a nice little contact point on the back of that satchel there for it to connect to, as well as the satchel on the hips. So I am about 97% sure that's the position the hand is supposed to go. I mean, it seems to sit okay with the shoulder. I wasn't 100% sure, and there's a very tiny contact point on the arm with the sword, so do be careful about that. I went ahead and glued it onto the arm prior to attaching that all to the body, just to save me some time and stress. Now, I don't know if these are spoilers or anything. I didn't recognize them. I did actually go back and try to find photos of some of this stuff to figure out where pieces went, and I did not recognize these models, but that could just be me. We've got this guy. Again, I know I need to clean up the mold lines. I will do that, don't worry. But with the heraldry and spear here. Now this guy, you can see there's a nice ugly gap. I could not get the sides to connect for whatever reason of his toga-like tunic. It just did not want to work with me. So I'm probably going to have to fill that in. I do like his weird jaw armor there. It's very Kingdom Death-like. And then we had, I think she was like the Madame or something. Kind of cool. Very regal. Having glued her to the base, that's going to be a bit of an issue trying to get in there because she does have a different texture for the padding that goes underneath her coat. And I got to clean that up a little bit better. That's okay. But again, that's one of the things I really like about these models, especially when they don't match the already existing armor sets. Sure, there's a lot of call-outs to the actual Black Knight, especially with that gorget thing that she's got under her neck there. You can see the actual Black Knight has something similar with the straps, so that's kind of a cool callback to him. And finally, we got this guy. I don't know what's going on here. If he thinks he's a dog, he does have those similar weighted shoes with the spikes, so his heels stay up. But he looks like something out of the starter set with those furs. This guy is also huge in comparison to some of the other ones. I think it's both his pose, the shoes, the cloak, the extra furs on top of his head. He just feels large to me. You can see he's not actually all that large. I'm assuming it is a he based on the lack of mammary glands that tend to exist on Kingdom Death female models. So he's got that nice bare chest like our dancer here. Whether he's as willing to flaunt it as that guy, I'm not 100% sure. Grabbing a few other random plastics just to see how things shake out, especially in terms of the ladies. An older pinup Forsaker as well as Fade. I mean, the sizes don't look too blanded. I mean, especially if you've got a lot of Kingdom Death models, the fluctuation in variance in the sizes, I don't see that being a huge issue. Grabbing an old lantern armor. I mean, this one's a little bit shorter, but they are in that kind of bent knee position with that large blade, so that could be kind of attributed to that. Again, Lucy in a bit of a crouching position, whereas the Madame, or whatever she is standing nice and straight. But then when you have guys like the Death King armor here that are just really big, really bulky and imposing, I mean, yeah, you're going to see some noticeable differences in size. Grabbing a few other plastics I've got handy. We've got one of the Halloween models, obviously with the Gorm head on her costume there. It's going to take up a bit more space. Grabbing the older Detective Twilight Knight, which I have dropped, broken, and fixed at least on 2 separate occasions that I can recall. Actually, she's a little bit taller than her with the hat. That's kind of surprising. So it is good to see that, you know, the variance that exists in the line, it's not, you know, super horrible. I know people like to complain about scale creep. It does exist in the line, but, you know, if you've got access to tons and tons of figures, it's not going to look really out of place. So I am happy to see that. Grabbing some of the resins, I think. Gunborg, who I finally finished painting. I just like that model, so I'm using that as an excuse to throw her in there. Again, she's a little bit taller, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. Grabbing one of the Squires. I mean, she's about the same size, and I know there was a little bit of upgrading in terms of height and thickness of the models with the Squires, which isn't that surprising. She's just huge. She's probably going to be the first of the bunch that ends up getting painted. I really like this guy. Girl, model, figure. I call everybody guy. But really looking forward to getting all these painted. And for the bulk of the complaints I've seen about the gaps, I mean, obviously they do exist. You can see there's like one right in there. I'm not going to be too worried about that. Considering there's people who barely even build and glue this stuff prior to painting, or playing for that matter, I don't think it's going to be a huge issue. And it's not like you can really see those gaps, but I will work on those prior to getting him glued down on the base. Overall, really pleased with the quality of the models in this set. I know, like I said, there's been complaints online. It was one of the earlier expansions that was completed, at least in terms of the plastics, in comparison to the actual, gameplay elements. So do keep that in mind, but I think he's a looker. I think he's going to be a fun one to give it a try to. The fact that we've got the mini campaign with the Squires, I really am looking forward to giving that a try because it's really challenging for me to maintain a game of Kingdom Death on the table. What with the fact that the kids are usually studying on it and I'm building like 25 different projects for various videos or for my own pleasure. So yeah, it does make a difference. But overall, you got a lot of bang for your buck, I think, in terms of the figures. If you're somebody like me that really enjoys the variety, quality, and style of the Kingdom Death figures, you got 6 survivors, you've got the knight. For under 100, I would say that's a pretty decent deal. I don't even know what it's going for on the store these days, but considering, like the gambler's chest is what, $400? I mean, yeah, you get a lot of bang for your buck in there, but, I think all of the costs are very relative. So I will just say, spend wisely, be smart in your purchases. We don't want to see anybody breaking the bank on this, obviously, after all. But I think if you can afford it and you enjoy it, I think you're going to have a lot to look forward to. And me personally am looking forward to all of the future expansions and figures as well. So with that said, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures saying thanks for watching, and we will hopefully see you back here soon. Bye-bye.